Greetings, prospective Antifa recruit. If you are receiving this message, it means that an Antifa super soldier has given your introduction credentials a passing grade, and you are being advanced to an introductory Antifa affinity group cell. Don't forget to bring your baseball bat and a copy of Rules for Radicals to your orientation. Okay. If you've been watching the news lately, there's been a lot of talk about Antifa.
The violence and vandalism is being led by Antifa.
People who are far leftist, Marx, Lenin, folks who embrace that ideology.
When you look at the Twitter feed of Antifa, you see that they are directing some of this.
President Trump had already tweeted, quote, "It's Antifa and the radical left."
This country is on fire.
Making sure that they are labeled as domestic terrorists is so important.
I've been undercover with Real City Antifa.
Radical left criminals, thugs, and others.
The president has officially labeled Antifa domestic terrorists.
I am about halfway through the prospecting process to become a full-fledged member of Antifa.
They are violent leftist thugs.
The whole goal of this, right, is to get out there and do dangerous things as safely as possible.
When you look at the horrific graffiti that I see in the streets, it's about overturning capitalism and really crude messages.
The country is on fire. Now, who is attacking us? Mr. Esper should know this. It's Antifa.
Hurting businesses and burning down buildings.
So what is Antifa? Well, there isn't really much to add to this discussion. The YouTuber Ollie of PhilosophyTube fame already did an hour-long video all about it. What could I hope to add? Well, Ollie said that he pulled a lot of his ideas from this book. So, without further ado, this is the Radical Reviewer taking a look at Antifa, the anti-fascist What? I haven't read that book. I don't even own the book? Well, is it being ordered at least? Oh, I see. The Amazon workers are on strike again. Or we are in the middle of a pandemic, so I probably shouldn't be forcing essential workers to deliver non-essential items to me at this time. Well, do I have any books about Antifa? Oh, okay, let's do that one then. Hello, this is the Radical Reviewer taking a look at Debunking the 3 Biggest Myths About Antifa by Spencer Sunshine, Revere Press, 2017. This is a zine that I picked up from the free zine section at my local anarchist bookstore. It's a super short read, so let's go ahead and look at the text in its entirety. The Antifa, or anti-fascist, movement has captivated the American public's attention as of late, especially in the wake of the deadly far-right gathering in Charlottesville, Virginia on August 12th, and clashes in Berkeley, California on August 28th. Or more recently, for those watching the video around the time when it came out, Antifa has gotten attention from the recent Black Lives Matter protests, as well as Trump and others calling Antifa a terrorist group. But many myths about the movement have been circulated in media reports and op-eds, and news clips like the ones I showed at the start of the video, creating something of a moral panic about the fight against fascism. Below are 3 of the most pernicious myths about Antifa and evidence as to why they are dangerously wrong. Myth number 1. Violence is at the core of Antifa. Sensationalist media coverage, especially since January, has portrayed violence as the core element of anti-fascist activism. In fact, about 95% of Antifa work does not involve violence. Media outlets seeking titillating stories fixate on that 5%, and what violence does occur, especially in Berkeley, has been wildly exaggerated. While meeting fascists wherever they gather is certainly part of it, most anti-fascist work consists of researching far-right activities, revealing the identities of fascists in their community, advocating that businesses refuse to provide resources to far-right groups, and engaging in educational programs, rallies, and benefits. This week, for instance, after Hurricane Harvey, anti-fascists are organizing relief efforts, while alt-right groups formed armed patrols to stop supposed looters. So basically, yeah, there are a great many things that fall under the label of Antifa. Some known fascist organizer is preparing to give a speech and you run up and punch him? Bam! Antifa! Some local hate group is proudly marching the streets and you show up to the counter-protest and throw a milkshake at them? Bam! Antifa! You see a local neo-Nazi Facebook page was created and you keep an eye on it to expose any parades or marches they schedule so that counter-demonstrations can be there? Bam! Antifa! You work at a hotel and some group called like United European Front or some shit is hosting an event in the lobby and you look them up and see that they're a neo-Nazi group and report that to the manager and get the event canceled? Bam! Antifa! You see some swastika graffiti on the back of a 7-Eleven and you go tell the owner so that they could paint over it? Bam! Antifa! You see some friend or family member posting some fascist memes or fascist jokes or talking points and you tell them to knock that shit off and explain why it's harmful and wrong? Bam! Antifa! Keep this in mind for the end of the video. Myth number 2. The violence is equal on both sides. The far right is an incredibly violent political movement, having killed almost 450 people in the US since 1990. Remember, this zine was written in 2017. The ADL puts the number at 38 people killed in 2019 alone. In the media's drive to create a both sides are equal narrative,
You had a group on one side that was bad, and you had a group on the other side that was also very violent.
many mainstream press sources wildly exaggerated Antifa violence. For example, regarding a 2016 Nazi demonstration in Sacramento, Politico wrote that counter-protesters linked to Antifa and affiliated groups attacked, causing a riot, after which at least 10 people were hospitalized, some with stab wounds. What they omitted is that 9 of those injuries were caused by the Nazis. The far right is responsible for at least 6 murders this year alone. Again, that's in 2017. ADL puts that number at 38 people killed in 2019 alone. These include the February 2017 xenophobic murder of an Indian man in Kansas, a March fatal stabbing in Times Square, the alleged murderer wanted to kill all the black men he could find, and a May fatal stabbing allegedly by a man who had alt-right affiliations. Later that month, 2 men were murdered after intervening against an Islamophobic tirade. The alleged killer had previously attended an alt-right rally. And on August 12th in Charlottesville, one of the participants in the fascist-led rally rammed his car into an anti-racist march, killing 1 person and injuring 19 others. And these dramatic incidents do not include the January 2017 shooting of a counter-protester against alt-right speaker Milo Yiannopoulos in Seattle, nor do they include the thousands of hate crimes, including murders, assaults, and attacks on mosques and synagogues that occur annually. I have found no reports of recent lethal attacks by anti-fascists. The only death I found was in Portland, Oregon, which occurred during a clash between anti-racist and Nazi skinheads in 1993. So, since 1990, the ratio of deaths caused by the far right versus Antifa is 450 to 1. And don't take my or this zine's word for it. Look up the stats for yourself. Or even just look at how they talk. Here's a clip from the viral and frankly hilarious Project Veritas video depicting what Antifa espouses.
You're trying to basically cut off both arteries.
Yeah,
So
hopefully so.
Squeeze. So the idea is you step to the side, grab the person, and then slam them down. Okay? That's one way. So here's the other way. Hey, come on, jump in.
You step, you grab his
Or you just solidly elbow. He will let go.
And here's what the fascist group the Proud Boys say.
That's the Proud Boys in a nutshell. We will kill you. We look nice. We seem soft. We have boys in our name. But like Bill the Butcher and the Bowery Boys, we will assassinate you.
We need more violence from the Trump people, Trump supporters.
Choke a motherfucker. Choke a bitch. Choke a tramp. Get your fingers around the windpipe. I want violence. I want punching in the face. I'm disappointed in Trump supporters for not punching enough. Get a fucking gun. Get ready to blow someone's fucking head off.
Myth number 3. Antifa is a gift to the far right. Many pundits have repeated the idea that Antifa is a major gift to the right. Furthermore, it is often argued that without Antifa, the far right would simply wither away. These folks clearly did not see the trial episode of Batman the Animated Series. In fact, the alt-right grew exponentially well before it faced organized street opposition. It is far from clear that the movement has grown in size due to the clashes, but there is abundant evidence that it has been hurt by them. After Yiannopoulos' February talk in Berkeley was cancelled, the resulting media glare brought attention to his unsavory views on underage sex. As a result, his book deal was cancelled, and he is no longer a sought-after speaker for the right. The aftermath of Charlottesville may have broken the back of the alt-right's fascist wing. The street fighting with anti-fascists caused the rally itself to be cancelled. Afterward, the alt-right suffered many material losses. Nazi websites have been knocked off the internet, nationwide marches cancelled, leaders have been arrested for felonies, and numerous digital platforms cancelled accounts. Richard Spencer's altright.com sees Charlottesville as a major defeat, and is now advocating the clandestine, leaderless resistance strategy because they feel it is pointless to organize openly. It is evident that public resistance works when confronting far-right groups, and Antifa are not the left-wing terrorists despite how they have been portrayed.
The violence and vandalism is being led by Antifa and other radical left-wing groups.
And so perhaps we should ask ourselves, why are so many mainstream media sources using dishonest methods to create a folk panic about Antifa, and who benefits as a result? Okay, so that's 3 myths debunked. We now know what Antifa isn't, so how about what Antifa is? Well, we're going to have a look at that right after these messages. Next time on Antifa of Our Lives. Monica! Yeah, Marcus? My nephew was posting some race and IQ BS regarding Black Lives Matter on Facebook. Did you explain that social and cultural factors show a greater predictability for IQ scores than genetics? I did, but he just kept saying, FBI stats, FBI stats. It was like talking to a brick wall. Oh, did you mention the Black Lives Matter report that came out of the Sentencing Project? That's a great source for explaining racial bias in the criminal justice system. No, I haven't seen that. I'll have to look it over. It sounds like that would greatly improve my arguments. Next time on Antifa of Our Lives. Are you ready for Now That's What I Call Antifa? The biggest collection of anti-fascist super hits, all in one cassette tape or compact disc. They got classic Antifa jams like Tear the Fascists Down by Woody Guthrie and The Day the Nazi Died by Chumbawamba.
The history books they tell of their defeat in 45. But they all came out of the woodwork on the day the Nazi died.
This isn't your dad's Antifa collection. Enjoy hard-hitting songs like Fuck Nazi Sympathy by Ots Rotten, Fascist Fuckwad by Bad Acid Trip, Nazi White Trash by Introspect. For some reason we couldn't get the rights to the leftover crack version. And Nazi Punks Fuck Off by the Dead Kennedy. What about songs in not English? Well, Now That's What I Call Antifa has you covered with tracks like Antifascista by ZSK or Alerta Antifascista by Sin Dios. Do you want to have a laugh? Enjoy playful songs like Skinhead or Nazis Shouldn't Drive by MTC.
Nothing should drive, nothing should drive at all. Nothing should drive, nothing should drive, nothing should drive at all.
All these and many more is now on Now That's What I Call Antifa. Order now by calling the number on your screen. Or actually just, like, download them or whatever. I mean, this is the internet. It's got, like, all songs free forever. So, order now! And we're back. So, what is Antifa? Well, I suppose we should first ask, what is fascism? Because unfortunately, just like racism doesn't always look like this, fascism doesn't always look like this. Umberto Eco has a list of 14 common features of fascism. It's got things like seeing the enemy as both strong and weak, like saying that illegal immigrants are both lazy and living off of welfare, but they're also taking everyone's jobs. And obsession with a plot, like thinking that SJWs or the globalists or the Jews or whatever are controlling the world. This list of 14 features of fascism is certainly something worth looking into. I have heard fascism defined in this way. Fascism is the promotion of a reactionary, traditionalist, authoritarian, right-wing, typically white supremacist worldview. Okay, so what is reactionary and traditionalism and authoritarian right and white supremacy? Well, we can basically play the definition game all day, so maybe it would be better to look at an example. Why would Antifa be at the protests against police brutality that sprang up in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd? I mean, where is the fascism for Antifa to be Antifa too? Or is it just Antifa calling everyone fascists like they're often claimed to do? Well, first, some background history. This story I'm about to tell you is detailed much more thoroughly in my review of the new Jim Crow, so look there if you want to learn more or if you have questions. But basically, slavery and slave patrols were obviously racist, and after the end of slavery, segregation and lynchings and convict lease programs and black codes and the like, backed by racist politicians and police and hate groups like the Ku Klux Klan, maintained this racist system. Many black folks fled this racist violence in the South, but because of racist hiring practices and lending practices and redlining making it difficult for black families to secure good jobs or a business or home loan and all that stuff that the civil rights movement was all about, black folks across the country were all but locked into dilapidated communities. Despite the gains of the civil rights movement, these black communities experienced inadequate education, job, and housing opportunities, making crime and drug use all the more common, and bring in the massive increase in policing and incarceration that have been the war on crime and the war on drugs, and you end up with an over-policing of black neighborhoods, black people disproportionately stopped and searched by the police, black people disproportionately charged more often and more severely than whites for comparable crimes, and police using brutality and lethal force disproportionately against black people. And, well, this is where the George Floyd-inspired police brutality protests come in. Okay, so history lesson over, we are now at the present. The protests stand in opposition to the police wanton use of lethal force. Fascism promotes right-wing authoritarianism, such as allowing the police to use lethal force as they see fit. The protests promote progressivism and moving forward to a better society. Fascism promotes a reactionary traditionalism, where solutions are found in our past. You know, make America great again, and all that. The protests reject white supremacy and the disproportionate cruelty the police enact on black communities. Fascism promotes the white supremacy that has been our country's long history of political, social, and economic suppression of black people. And so, it's not surprising to see that right-wing hate groups are out in force promoting a fascist reaction to the George Floyd police brutality protests. Look at tweets like this one explaining that the white nationalist group the Proud Boys intended to act as agent provocateurs in the protests and engage in hate crimes. I hope some folks engage in Antifa to stop them. Or how about this story of a Proud Boy member trying to set off a firework to get the cops to violently attack protesters, and someone did an Antifa by throwing that shit right back in their car. Now that's some good Antifa. What about this article from Business Insider, which explains that the FBI reported that far-right social media groups have called for provocateurs to attack federal agents and protesters, and that the Department of Homeland Security reported that white supremacists encouraged followers to incite violence and attempt to start a race war, and that the white supremacist group Identity Europa posed as a fake Antifa organization to call for violence. Boy, I sure hope that there is some folks engaged in some Antifa to put a stop to all that. And this isn't just about fascist provocateurs and counter-protesters. Law enforcement is involved as well. I'm sure you've seen posts like this, or this, displaying cops with neo-Nazi tattoos or promoting hateful messages. And if you're interested to learn more about this, I recommend checking out this article, which discusses white supremacist infiltration into the police, as well as this study about police posting white supremacist and hateful messages on social media, or this FBI study titled White Supremacist Infiltration of Law Enforcement. Fascism in our police departments is a serious systemic problem that needs to be addressed. But in the meantime, I hope folks are out there doing some Antifa and exposing police officers who make white supremacist posts on social media, or exposing police officers who have neo-Nazi tattoos, or exposing police officers who have affiliations with fascist groups. Basically, if you look at what kinds of things fascism supports, it's no wonder that fascist individuals and groups are out trying to discredit or attack people engaged in the George Floyd police brutality protests. And folks need to be out there engaged in some Antifa to stop them. If you'd like to know more about Antifa, I recommend PhilosophyTube's video on the subject, as well as Reeducation, who's done a great series on it as well. And Bamundalak and Thought Slime and a lot of other great folks have made content discussing Antifa. There'll be links to all this stuff in the description, go check it out. The last thing I'd like to say is to remind you that Antifa isn't a group, it's an action. Y'all remember the Verb It's What You Do campaign?
Verb, it's what you do.
Well, Antifa is kinda like that. It's not a group you join, it's an action that you embark on. If neo-Nazis are out marching and you join the counter-protest, you're Antifa. If you make copies of this zine and leave piles of it at work or at protests, you're Antifa. If you see a friend or family member adopting fascist talking points and a fascist worldview and you confront them, you're Antifa. If you vote for ballot initiatives or for candidates that are antithetical to a fascist worldview, you're Antifa. Hell, if you are a fascist watching this video and you click the downvote button and you leave a comment calling me like a commie degenerate or something, well, guess what? You're leading to the promotion of this anti-fascist content, and therefore, you're Antifa. Maybe Antifa aren't the real fascists, but sometimes even fascists do an Antifa. Anyway, as always, I'd like to thank my wonderful patrons. Your tremendous support has allowed me to get dog insurance and pay my Antifa membership dues and support other creators I couldn't otherwise support and things like that, which is really awesome. I do appreciate you folks a lot. And if you would like to support what I do here, you could go to patreon.com/radicalreviewer. And if you're interested in radical theory or whatever, you can get your radical reviews here with the Radical Reviewer. Thanks for watching.
But you'll all be gone before too long. The only good fascist is a dead one. You'll all be gone before too long. The only good fascist is a dead one.
No! God, please, no! No! No!